Ever wondered if things can just be born evil? In this enlightened age of ours, concepts like good and evil are often painted as outmoded, or even according to the modern thought, people and animals too, obviously, are simply products of their environment and no more responsible for their actions than a twig in a stream. But I know better. Some things are just born bad. About 10 years ago, we had a German Shepherd named Duchess that had a litter of puppies, 7 in all. She looked like any other shepherd you've ever seen. The seventh was a snowy white, not a true albino, just white, furred, with black nose and blue eyes. There was never any doubt which one we were keeping out of the litter. We named her Princess. Before the end of the 6th month, any plans we had about giving away or selling the others became a moot point, as all of them were dead. We just found them at a rate of about one a month, not mangled or anything, just dead, as if they died in their sleep. At first we thought maybe their mother, it being her first litter and all, was accidentally crushing or smothering them. Later we had no doubt as to what had killed them. Within a year she became dominant to her mother, her father, a tough old alpha that he was, and to a degree us too. Her parents shielded us away from her. When we put out their food, she ate until her heart's content, undaunted by the other two. Once I tried to shoo her away and let the others two eat, she snarled at me, barking those perfect white fangs into his black gums, and losing a growl so deep that I felt it in my guts more than I heard it. After that, I left her alone too. I often wondered if her parents of serial killers know that they have a monster in the making. I mean, sure, some of them are to blame for how their kids turn out, products of up households with systems like the abuse of all possible flavors. But then there are the ones that seem to be true operations. It's those families I'm curious about. Do they smile and laugh and pretend that everything's fine? I know that we sure did. We downplayed the weirdness around Princess, tried to rationalize her behavior, the bizarre things she'd do, like killing rabbits and leaving them hung in the bushes behind our house. Some dogs do that to show they love you. Cats too, my father would say. To them, it's just bringing you food. To me, it looked like she just was taunting us. Just like the puppies years earlier. Not one of those rabbits ever had a mark on it. Princess, just like her mom and dad, was well looked after and never hurt for a meal. So it wasn't as if she were hunting for food. Her remarkable kills were always untouched. No, the only thing I ever saw her eat was a kitten. We had some little cats in the woods around our house. One mommy cat had a litter in our tool shed. Federal really is stretching it. Most of them were tamed enough to pretend this mommy being amongst them. I returned home from school one day and headed around the back to look in on them. The door to the shed was open inside, and I found Princess, her jaw pink from her feast as she devoured that last kitten. Her beautiful blue eyes never left mine. The mummy we found displayed on what I'd come to think of as the rabbit brush. The tipping point came the same year when we found her seared dead. He was the best dog we'd ever have. That we ever will have. We woke one Saturday morning to find him in the backyard lying dead without a mark, like so many rabbits before him. I can count the number of times I ever saw my father cry on one hand. That was one of them. That was also when we found out how she killed so cleanly. She strangled her prey like a jaguar. The fur The fur at her father's neck was still wet with her saliva. We spent that morning burying that good old faithful dog, and then he sent me and my mom away on some pretense. No words were spoken, but there was no doubt about what he intended to do. I'm sure that there are some of you reading this and will find that notion of putting an animal down will be among them. What other options did he really have? Take her to an animal shelter, give her to some other family who could do that and go to sleep with a clear conscience? As it turned out, we weren't getting any sleep that night regardless of our decision. We spent that afternoon at my uncle's house once. When I came in from playing to get a glass of water, I overheard my mom telling my uncle that she sometimes wondered if the dog was possessed or something. I sometimes wondered the same thing. Later that evening, not long before the sunset, we got a call from Dad. Apparently, the deed was done. By the time we arrived home, he already washed up and changed clothes, but there was a little he could have done to hide his wounds, even less to hide the haunted look on his face. Both his arms and one leg were bandaged, and that was bad enough, but what struck me was all these years later was just how terrified he looked. It wasn't until I actually been through combat that I realized that expression is how men look after they've stared death right in the face. My father never talked about it, but he drafted a friend from up the street to come help. And it's from him that I get this part of the story. Princess was many things, bloodthirsty and evil tip amongst them, but stupid wasn't amongst them. And that, if nothing else, she took after her father. Her dad, Rocky, was famous for letting himself into the house if it was storming out. He'd figure out how to pause open the sliding glass door out of the piano. What was really astounding is that he also had a requisite of mind to close it behind him, not being stupid as she knew something was up, and made herself disappearing into the woods. Dad, not wanting to put this off and being in full-on revenge mode, calling his friend from down the road and filled him in. So off on the hunt the two of them went. In his own words, she was laying for us. If it sounds absurd to say that Princess lays in ambush, then I failed at convincing just how wrong everything about her was truly was. She led them on a chase through the woods, barking whatever it seemed those stupid humans had lost to her again. Then she laid up beneath an overhang on the creek bank just where the path crossed it and waited. She was on my father for the instant he stepped down into the creek, grabbing his leg and making him fall headfirst into the water. Then she went straight for his throat. My dad had already lost his rifle. At that point, he grabbed her with both his hands to try to fend her off, wrestling with 115 pounds of teeth, claws, and muscle in a foot and a half of water, Princess savaging his arm. All the while, at some point, he managed to work his leg up between him and the dog and kicked her away from him, providing his friend with a clean shot, which he took, catching Princess through the chest. He put a second round through her head, point blank. Then he helped my dad back home and to the emergency room, telling him he'd go back to see after Princess once they got home. She can rot where she is, was all my dad had to say on that subject. After they got back from the hospital, our neighbor went back on his ATV to pick up Princess for a burial. He was a dog lover like us, and it just didn't seem right to him to leave her if he'd spent as much time tiptoeing around as we had. He might have felt differently. Sleep flat wasn't there, he said. No blood trail, nothing. He also said that after he'd been there poking around for a few minutes, he noticed something else strange. No birds. It was dead quiet, the way the woods sometimes get right before a bad storm blows in. Wisely, he got the hell out of there. The storm was coming, all right. That night, Duchess came pawing at the back door, wanting in something she never once done in all the time she'd been with us, and I had a dream. In it, I was playing football in the backyard with some buddies and ran over to where bad throw had landed, near Rocky's grave. As I reached for it, Princess had shoved up out of the ground to grab my hand. I woke up with a jolt and promptly scared out of roughly 10 more years of life by the house of a German Shepherd in the hallways. It was Duchess, of course. She was sitting in the hallways, whining and wagging her tail nervously. She was looking back towards the front of the house. I walked over to her and placed my hand on her big doggy head and said, "What is it, girl?" That's when I heard the distinct sound of claws on glass. Something was pawing at the piano door. Though terrifying, I grabbed Duchess by the collar and dragged her along with me to my parents' room, shutting the door behind me. I was 14. I was terrified. But even in that terror, reaching my parents' room wasn't just for the security of Mommy and Daddy. That's where the guns were. I woke them up and told them what I heard. "Oh, sweet Jesus," my mother said. Dad got up and locked the bedroom door and said, "Y'all lock yourselves in the bathroom." I heard the piano door slide open. If any of the rest of us had any doubts about what just had come into the house, Justice sure didn't. The only thing she ever feared in this world was her own pup. A deep rumble of a growl vibrating in the floor beneath our bare feet, and Dutch's bladder letting go as if on cure. Mine wasn't far from doing the same. What followed was a 6-hour exercise in pure terror, punctuated by snarling attacks on the bedroom door, crashes through the rest of the house as Princess found more things to break, whispered prayers from my mother, and of course from my father, as if another of his attempted forays out of the bedroom where we were. Without a phone, the one on my parents' nightstand was dead. We later found the phone line had to have been ripped out of the main box. My mom suggested that we try to make it to the car, and above and beyond everything else, it was my father's response to that idea that was really scared me. Of the three of us, he was supposed to be the rational thinker, but we got instead was, "Honey, I think that's what it wants us to do." As the world thought the windows turned from black to gray, a quiet fell over the house. Mom and I watched through the window, cranking our heads in an attempt to get an eye of the piano door. But try as we might, the best we can do was to get a view of the most piano, more than enough confident for a dog to sneak in or out, even big one like Princess. After an hour of silence, my dad quietly opened the bedroom door. I remember thinking what a useless gesture any attempt to straight was. Dog senses are so much more acute than ours that he might as well have fired a 21-gun salute. Dad stopped in the hallways and shooed me back to the bedroom. "Don't come out until I say okay." Carefully, he made his way through the house to the piano door, where we heard him shut it before he shouted back to us, "Stay in the bedroom until he told us to come out." Though the door, I can hear him moving around, seemed to be dropping things into the garbage bag. After about 30 minutes, he gave us all clear. What greeted us was a disaster: ripped up cushions and pillows, destroyed furniture, shredded papers, and books all over the floor. Most terrible were the smears of gore all over everything. My mother wondered aloud at what she dragged into the house. Grim-faced, my father did not answer. He simply turned and headed out the back. to bury Rocky for a second time. We cleaned up the best as we could while Dad drove down to our neighbor's house to make all the appropriate calls. After all these years, I still wondered the portion of homeowners insurance to cover attack by undead demon ghost dogs. Unspoken, we all wondered what that night would bring. As it turned out, we never got a repeat, but Duchess never left the house again. Time rolled on. Occasionally, we found a new present on the rabbit bush, just a friendly reminder of another token of princess abiding love. About 2 years into college, my dad called to tell me our neighbor has passed. Heart attack in his sleep, the crooner said my dad. But what we were both thinking was not a mark. There was plenty of nights where I wondered what the last thing was to pass before that old batch of eyes. I can guarantee you it started right back. I've seen firsthand how it feeds. Not long after my folks put the house up for sale, our standard of acted as a go-between on that deal was about a week after the new owners moved in. I received a call from the man of the house. He wanted to know if we left any pets behind when we moved, already fearing the answer. I asked him why. He asked, "Oh, me and the kids keep seeing this white shepherd in the woods. Pretty, pretty."